think we're ready to go. And we actually are getting a return performance from our friend Elisa. And I'm going to let her take over, tell everyone what she does, reintroduce herself, and introduce our esteemed guests. And Elisa, welcome back.
Yeah, thanks, Storm. Good to see you again. And thanks for introducing the session. So I'm Elisa Thoma. I work for LiveDMA. LiveDMA is a European network for live music associations, representing over 3,000 venues, clubs, and festivals in Europe. And when we were talking with Storm and Gigi about this whole conference and what we can bring to it, for me, it was really obvious that we had to share what we do on data collection, and especially in this current situation, how data can be a powerful tool. My guests today are our LiveDMA survey coordinator, Arne D, and Anders Tangen, who is LiveDMA co-president. And I would leave the word now to Arne to introduce himself.
Yes, hi, I'm Arne indeed. I'm from Amsterdam, the Netherlands. My main job is working for the Association of Dutch Music Festivals and Venues. So basically, most live music venues and festivals in Holland are a member. And for the European network, I focus on the data collection. So we collect data from 2,600 venues all over Europe, and it gives lots of insights and information about their business.
Thanks, Arne. Anders, would you like to introduce yourself too?
Yeah, sure. My name is Anders Tangen. I'm from Oslo, Norway. I work for the Norwegian Live Music Association, which is the members organization for venues and festivals in Norway. We have currently about 420 members, which it's a great diversity within our members in terms of size, but also like in legal status, if they're public or commercial. So it's everything from Live Nation till small volunteer-based venues. So it's a big diversity amongst them, which we're going to talk about later, but and how this is going to the COVID-19 situation is affecting the different kinds of venues and festivals. Yeah, and like you said, I'm also the co-president of LiveDMA. Yeah.
Thanks, Anders. So before we dive into the key facts and figures and data, just a couple of words about our data collection. So the survey is one of our core activities at LiveDMA. Each year we collect the data on the activities of the venues of our network, their legal framework, financial indicators, their audience capacity, human resource, and we do this in a bottom-up approach. So our members, the national associations, collect these indicators from their members, the venues and clubs, and then really own their own data. So data collection really helps us in highlighting the artistic, the social, and the economic impact of live music venues, and gives us important input for our advocacy work on a European level. And we also support with the data our members to do the advocacy work, or to support them in their advocacy work on national levels. So earlier this year, we published our survey report. I have a physical copy right here, but you can also check this out on our website. And this gives insight on the key numbers, also overviews on key numbers per region, and we also included our recommendations for data collection, but also our recommendation on how to set a dialogue on music policies and regulations. And yeah, as Arne just said, we collect data from 2,600 venues, and so these data represent those venues and not every single venue that exists in Europe. So now I'll leave the word to Arne, our survey coordinator, to share with you some key indicators that demonstrate how diverse the European venue and club scene is.
Yes, thanks, Elisa. Well, actually, you already summarized it quite well, what we have and do. But it's interesting, like you say, the diversity, I can say something about that. We can see from 2,600 venues, it's in 15 regions in 11 different countries, our latest numbers, the data 2017. And for example, maybe interesting to say is that it's mainly small venues, so it doesn't include like the big concert halls and arenas and stadiums. We can say 50% of, so half of all the venues has an audience capacity under 400 persons. So basically it's really small venues. The so-called grassroots venues where artists make their first steps and slowly get some experience and before they go to bigger festivals and bigger stadiums. So it's really important for the development of artists and the development of audiences. The members in our network. Also, we can. It's really important, like you stress out, like the diversity. Also, in the legal status, we can see that half of the members, half of the venues, is private commercial, which means they're basically a company, and they don't get subsidy. The other half of our venues, about 1,300, is non-profit. And sometimes these are public venues, like state-owned, mostly financed by the governments, but most of them are private non-profit venues, which means they're an association or a foundation. So they have a non-profit character. And it's interesting to see the differences per region, because we can see extremely enormous differences between the different countries. Just give a few examples. In the UK and in Spain and in Germany, it's mostly dominantly private commercial venues. While in other countries like Belgium, Switzerland, Netherlands, it's mostly non-profit venues. And other countries have a sort of a mix. Also, there's one more thing maybe interesting to say is the diversity in the employment. We can see that some countries really have cultural volunteers work. This is also related to their legal status, because like non-profit organizations more often work with volunteers, of course, than private commercial. But we can also relate this to the region and the country. For example, also in Belgium, Switzerland, but also in Norway. There's a high amount of volunteers work. So the venues are also really depending on these persons and this work. And maybe one last thing I can say is the numbers itself. It's really impressive because we collected data from 2,600 venues. And it's interesting to see they organize over 400,000 live performances per year, which is almost 1 million live artist performances. So it's 400,000 music events on which almost 1 million live music performances. And it's also impressive to see the financial numbers. It's over 2 billion turnover per year, which also means like 600 million euros per year goes to the artists as wages for their performances. And we can also see that almost 90,000 people have a job because of the music venues. So maybe this is a nice bridge towards our biggest problem this year, the COVID-19, because it means those people don't have a job anymore, the artists can't perform anymore, and there's no income anymore. So it's quite a disastrous impact.
Yeah, so if we, as the venues are closed now, can we learn something from our numbers, from the data we already collected? What does the survey teach us about the possible damage for those venues and clubs?
Yeah, we can also already get a lot of information from our existing data, because we know exactly how much turnover, how much income the venues have, also specified in how much they normally sell on tickets. So what's the ticket income, and also the catering sales. And this is income that now, if you close down, obviously is completely disappeared. And then you can see the big difference between the private commercial venues and the non-profit venues, because the non-profit venues also have some subsidy from the government, sometimes the national government, sometimes the municipalities. But that means they often still have this income. So governments are now tending to not stop the subsidies, of course, when the venues are closed down. So some venues are up to 30-40% of their income is subsidy. which means they can still cover a lot of their fixed costs. The problem when you close down as a venue, of course, because of the virus now, is that you lose your audience income. That means for private commercial venues, they basically lose 100% of their income, but you still have expenses that keep going, and that's mainly the housing cost, the rent, of course, for the building, and also the employment costs, your fixed personnel. So you still have keeping costs, but you don't have income. Well, the subsidized venues, some larger non-profit venues, some public venues, they can still cover those fixed costs with the subsidy. So there the problem is relatively low, but you can see for the larger venues that are really depending on the audience income, and also for all the venues in Spain and Germany and the UK, yeah, they don't have income, so they can't pay their fixed costs anymore. And then it's totally depending on how much reserves they have, how long they can survive, of course. Because of course you can survive maybe 2, 3, 4 months, but if you don't have income at a certain point, it just stops and you go bankrupt and you can't pay your employees anymore.
Yes, and so you just shared earlier, like the impressive numbers of income venues generate. Is there is from our data, can you already calculate how much money a venue misses out?
Yeah, actually we can. It's well, we have financial data from 12 regions in 10 different countries. It's 1,700 venues, 1,700 venues. And we can already see that only from ticket sales and catering sales, they miss out now. It's 3 million euros per day. So that basically means like 90 million euro per month that are closed down. So it's enormous, and it's only talking about these 1,700 venues. So in these areas, you have even more venues. You have a lot of larger venues that miss out more money. And we didn't count all the venues in the regions that we don't have the data from. So it's just a rough indication. But you could say like it's millions a week that is missed out by the venues. So it's enormous amounts. And maybe interesting to say, like, of course, the venues miss this money, which they partly need to cover their expenses. Like I said, the personal costs, the rent, stuff like that. But normally, 1/3 of the money goes directly to the artists because that's the program costs. So I think apart from the venues, the artists are the main victim of this, of course, because they also lose 100% of their income.
And so if we see now how diverse, well, it was a very I think we got a good introduction on how diverse the European live music scene can be for the venues. And if we now look at the state aids, how are the support measures actually fit? Do they fit for the different typologies you just presented, and are they enough? And so as we cannot speak for whole Europe, maybe Anders, I would like to ask you to answer this for Norway. How do you feel about this?
Yeah, well, I think I just want to first address the things that Arne was talking about, like the different kinds of venues and festivals, whose are most affected. I think it's, at least in Norway, I think it's too early to say, because we don't really know yet how accurate the support measures are, and who are really benefiting from it and who's falling out. But because we definitely see that a lot of venues and festivals are caught in between different kinds of support systems. They can't apply for certain support systems. So I think it's a bit too early to say at this point. But we see that I guess that the bigger you are, the more drastic are the consequences in a way as well, because the money-wise it's bigger and higher. But I think, yeah, well, in Norway, there's quite a lot of support measures implemented by the government. So that's really good. They are pouring billions of Norwegian crowns into supporting the businesses, so the businesses can survive and stay floating through this period. But of course also the employees as well. So it's a two-way thing. Concerning the businesses, we have like in cases of layoffs, if you have to lay off employees, the government covers the salaries from day 2, so 100% from day 2. The VAT is postponed, so there's a delay on the VAT, so you don't have to pay that now. There's also like a delay on the corporation tax, which helps. They have like a loan warranty for small and mid-sized businesses. So if you need a loan, there's a possibility to get a loan. And of course, you're allowed to keep your subsidy if you have subsidy from the state, local or national. You're allowed to keep that subsidy, which is also important, of course. So that kind of keeps the businesses hopefully floating through this period. And also for the businesses, they have this support system which is aimed to cover the daily expenses. So rent, for example, and other like expenses that you have, monthly expenses, you can apply to cover them. But there are certain criteria to which kind of businesses that can apply for that kind of support. And we already see now, they opened for this last Saturday in Norway. So we already see now that a lot of our members can't apply for that kind of support, which is unfortunate. So that's for the businesses. For the employees, if you're self-employed, and for most, for example, artists, this is applicable. They after 17 days from when the COVID-19 situation started, after day 17, they get benefits from the government. So, and this is calculated from the last 3 years of your income. So the average from your last 3 years, you get 80% of that in benefits. So we also see that, and this is really good. So all the self-employed, they are covered as well, not just the employees, but also the self-employed, which is especially good for the artists who lost their income in a matter of hours. When we had our lockdown on the 12th of March, and within a couple of hours, a lot of the artists have lost their income for the next year or something. So of course this is dramatical. And another thing as well, we have a specific support system for the culture field. So the culture sector has also like a specific support system. I'm not going to go that much into depth about that, but you can apply for loss of ticket sales income. And the point of that is that other means of like losses are covered in other support systems. So, but you see now that the losses in income, for example, from the bar sales or from renting out your venue to private events and so on, sponsorship. If you lose sponsorship funding, you can't apply for that in this kind of support. So this support system was for the first time now was for just 2 months, for March and April, and we see now that, well, this is like a bit of a rough data, but we have seen that probably 260 of our members can apply for that support system, but only 60 applied. roughly 200 did not apply for this support. So we can see as a lot of our venues and festivals are feeling that they can't apply for this, and it's probably different reasons for that, but this support is not accurate. So hopefully our national ban now is until the 15th of June. So there must be some new support for culture from May and until 15th of June, and hopefully we'll improve the support that was given now to make it a bit more accurate. Yeah, so that's basically the situation now in Norway.
Yeah, thank you. And I think I would like to touch on several points you just said, because so there are quite different emergency measures for venues. Some are general economic measures, and other are really cultural specific. And what you said is that that some of the criteria to access these fundings just doesn't fit for the venue sector. And what I'd like to add also from what we've been doing at Live DMA for the last couple of weeks, we've been surveying and observing also how these different support measures are implemented in the different European countries, and there are considerable discrepancies. So be it just in the funds that are made available, and also in the criteria. So in some countries, small businesses can, small cultural business can apply for cultural fundings, and others it's only the artists. So this will also create really a different speed for European countries, we have to say. But what I'd like to do now is maybe look a bit back on data again, and we were just saying that these measures are short-term solutions. And Arne, could you maybe give us some assumptions for the long term? How long can a venue currently survive?
Yeah, I think, like you say, and also like Anders says, in Norway, you really have to look at specific business models and sizes of the venues and the area, because in general, like Anders pointed out, the large venues are just so much more damaged than the small venues in absolute numbers, but also relatively, because they just have a larger share of audience income. I think in most countries, for the first 2-3 months, there are general measures, compensation measures, which are applicable to all companies in the country. It's just to save, in general, employment and businesses in general. So you also see in the Netherlands that for the first 3 months, the main goal was to not create unemployment. For example, in Holland, the government also pays 90% of the for the next 3 months for the people that are on the payroll. And in addition, the same as in Norway, they have a compensation measure for freelancers, which can be used by all the technical people in the venues that often work as a freelancer, but also the artists. So I think most people will have a guarantee on income for the next 3 months, and probably it will be extended for another 3 months. But at some point, like the national government, it stops there and they run out of money. And then you can see there are specific measures needed for the cultural sector instead of general measurements. But also it will depend on which government feels responsible for the venues. For example, I spoke to the coordinator of the Belgian live music venues this Monday, and he pointed out like most venues are supported and financed, subsidized by the national government. So they have to get some support from the national government. But for example, in the Netherlands, the subsidy comes completely from the municipalities, from the local governments. So I think at some point, the venues can survive for a few months with the general measures, but then it really starting to depend. For example, in the Netherlands, it will depend per municipality, per city. Maybe one city wants to help them out and make sure the venue survives, and another city doesn't have the means or doesn't have the priority. So I think it's important per region to very specifically look at the people responsible, the government, and the help that is needed. So yeah, and I think that's also, we can easily calculate the lost turnover, but the damage is something different. Like I said, if it's a subsidized venue that's good subsidized by the municipality, and they can cover their fixed costs, so they can cover the rent and the employees by the subsidy, then they can survive much longer. In theory, they can go on 1 or 2 years without with being closed, where other larger venues will maybe survive 1 month if there's not extra compensation money. So and the long term is the real problem. I think the most venues will survive for a few months, but at some point when the shops are open again, maybe in the fall, and the schools are open again, of course the venues and the festival will be the very last thing before people can have gatherings again, come together. And it's not only if it's allowed, it's also there won't be that much bands available for touring. People might be afraid to still go to venues. There's also an economical recession that's expected, which also leads to less activities and less audience visits. So I think all these things together, the real threat and the worry is for the long term. Because now everybody thinks, okay, we can survive, but if they have to close down until early 2021, and also without extra support, I think seriously half of the venues will go bankrupt, and it's really depending in the end on the government and the municipality if they will save and let these venues survive. So it doesn't look very
yes, but just to maybe to conclude this, what you said, depending on what door you have to knock, it's always good to have your data and to collect your data and really to show what you need to be aware of what your specific needs are. So thanks, Arne, for sharing your work with us today. And if you're interested in how to start collecting data, I can just again advise you to check out the survey publication on our website. It's a quick read, which gives you already some good starts on how to work with data for advocating the support you need.
Thank you, Elisa, and thank you, Arne and Anders. Anders, I think Norway might win for the best benefits through all this, from what you were describing. But anyway, I'm curious, how long did it take? You may have mentioned it here or elsewhere, but how long did it take to get this survey done?
Arne, would you like to answer?
Well, yeah, we do it on a national level. So like, we are umbrella organization, so we're a network of networks. Mm-hmm. So for example, in the Netherlands, we have 110 members. Mm-hmm. And I collect it. It takes 3 or 4 months.
3 or 4 months. Okay.
And wow. Then, but for on European level, of course, we have to collect from 15 regions. We have to check the data. We have to do all the calculations. So that takes a bit longer. But for every venue, for every association, it's essential to have the numbers, because no politician will ever listen to you if you don't have the numbers ready and can prove. And now this crisis, it only amplifies the fact, like, you have to have your data and you have to make clear, otherwise you can calculate the damage. But you can do it very quickly. We did an extra survey last month only to ask for the damage at our venues, and within a week I had the data from all the venues, because of course it has priority for them. And then we could make more detailed calculations about what's the real damage, and also about their liquidity position, like do they have reserves, do the compensation methods work, because that's essential. Maybe I don't know if there's time, but maybe one thing that's interesting to point out is the ticket, the pre-sales of the tickets are quite essential for the venues, because normally actually they live from the pre-sales.
Yeah.
A large venues already sold, for example, 2 million euros on tickets for the next month. It's also for the big festivals. And this money is the money they use to pay their employees and to pay their rent.
Right.
So one of the biggest problems, apart from that they lose their income, was we went to the government and we said, like, we know there's a consumer right to get a refund of your ticket if the show is postponed or cancelled.
Yeah.
But can we change this temporarily so that the audiences don't ask their money back all at the same time, because that would mean bankruptcy for a lot of festivals.
Yeah.
So, in the Netherlands, the government says, okay, we're not gonna totally delete the consumer rights, but what we can do is help out to create an awareness campaign and to ask the audience to accept vouchers and to keep their tickets. So we have like a website in the Netherlands, it's called saveyourticket.nl, bewaarjeticket.nl. And we really ask the audiences, it's together with the sports sector and the museum, and to really keep on their tickets so they don't ask for refunds, maybe next year. And it's purely for the liquidity for the venues to make money.
Yeah. Wow. Well, we've come to the end of our time. Thank you again. And